Ladies and gentlemen, we love that you are joining us here, and we hope that you could do us a favor. If you are liking our episodes, please share them. Tell us that you like them. Leave us a review, and we will be eternally grateful.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are the Wizard and the Priestess. Welcome to our fun. This week, I have my fellow co-host,
Matt.
Oh, hi, Matt.
Our intros are killing it.
Thank you. And I would like your dad joke of the week.
Ooh. Why? No, how did the moon cut his hair?
You raised it.
He eclipsed it.
You should have said that one a few weeks ago. You missed out.
Well,
I feel a bit disappointed, bit gypped. Right, I hope you all enjoyed that, but I don't know. Oh, we'll let that one just move on out.
You're smiling and you laughed. Therefore, you found it funny. Therefore, I made your day just a little bit brighter. You are welcome. Continue.
Thanks, Matt. I'm learning to say thank you more. So thank you for the joy. Also, I was going to say that we are for the next 3 weeks. Hey, something I found out recently. I've been doing a bit of research, and I've recently found out this is going to blow your mind. Maybe not in a good way, but all of the astrology that I have been following for the last, say, for my whole life, anything astrologically, has been based upon what is known as Western astrology. And get this, it is 24 degrees ahead of what the actual planets are doing.
Are you saying that you've been telling us the future?
I didn't think of it like that, but yeah, I am. Fortune teller. For me, I was a bit devastated to find out that the planets aren't actually doing what I'm saying they're doing. And the energy might actually...
Years. Is that 2 years from now?
No, 24 degrees is literally, I think 30 degrees is a month.
Right.
So 24 degrees is a whole month behind or a whole month ahead.
Mm.
So if you were to actually look with a telescope up into the sky, it would not be, we would not be in Aries right now.
So which one is most
what day
accurate?
Is it? Oh, we would maybe just be about to go into Aries. No, we're not going into Aries just yet. We'd still be in Pisces. What's most accurate? So there's 2 different types. So sidereal is Vedic astrology, and that is based upon the movements of the actual planets and stars and Earth, which is in alignment with what you look up to the stars and see. That would be Vedic astrology. But that is more functioning or more focused on, just like more spirit stuff and more about the purpose of divine purpose and things. Whereas Western astrology is sort of what I've been like studying and focusing on. And that is more connected to the planet's doing this, the planet's action does that. Therefore, that impacts you as an earthly being in this way because of your natal chart, which says this, that, and this. But if you looked up at the sky, all the planets currently are not moving direct, which means they aren't currently moving forward. However, a Western astrologer would tell you we have a lot of power in the next 3 weeks because everything's moving forward. There is not a single planet that is in retrograde. Every single planet in the sky, every single planet in Western astrology, it's just because the Earth doesn't spin exactly 365 days, right? It shifts a little bit. There's pivot room. Nothing is exact. Nothing is obsolete. But Vedic astrology, I think, is. It follows exactly what's going on in the sky.
We've been lied to this whole time.
I know. I found out the other day, Morgana and I were talking about it, and it was just disappointing. However, it doesn't mean that we can't utilize Western astrology still, but it just puts a spanner in the works.
Maybe we
because
can
if you're
see
looking
what's
up in
coming.
the sky,
Ish.
maybe that's it. I mean, it is. It's kind of like that, but you sort of live your life as if it's happening.
That's some
And,
Nostradamus
when
shit, isn't it?
yeah, and when we tap into the energy of the astrology, it's actually, we're not even there.
That's just
Anyway,
although
I'm
that's
not
just one
dissing
sort of
astrology.
one possibility that might happen.
But it
You're-
changes everything because if you were going off that changes the 24 degrees. You've got to go back 24 degrees to see where you are actually. So personally, I'm not Libran anymore. I'm actually Virgo. We're Virgo.
You take that back right now.
It's crazy. Anyway, and then it changes everything. It changes your north node and all the aspects. Your ascendants might not change everything, because there's a lot of things like, some planets take like 18 years to move. So there's like a whole, a whole or decade. And so therefore there's a whole epoch that is, not epoch, but
Well,
a
then
whole era.
maybe the start of next episode, I need you to go outside, look at the stars, and then tell me what's going on.
Yeah. Well, okay. I've just got to get more connected to astronomy over astrology, I guess, and then connect that back to the spirit again, which the Vedic astrology does. Sidereal astrology does do that. Anyway, it was a bit of a wow moment after I was finally so into and really understanding and learning so deeply about astrology. And then I was like, oh, well, that's a bit of a annoyance. Anyway, just so you know, all the planets are currently direct for the next 3 weeks, so which means that energy is moving forward. Whatever seeds you're planting, allow them to be planted. Don't be afraid. Get going.
Well, I have a question for you.
Yes, Matthew. Are you going to let me answer the question? Because last week you asked me a question and then you actually didn't let me answer, or I did answer and then you were like, no, this is actually what you would do. Everyone heard it. Everyone saw it. Everyone actually liked it. So, I mean, let's just go. Ask away.
Is this like having a conversation with yourself?
That's what you did last week.
Sure.
Just like that.
So, have you ever experienced pain?
I have.
Physical pain?
All sorts of pain.
Sorry to keep you up.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's
Emotional
been a big
pain.
day. Yes, I have experienced emotional pain.
Mental pain.
Yes, I have experienced mental pain.
Spiritual pain.
I would say I would classify spiritual pain as when I have gone against my intuition in something and it's felt really uncomfortable. So, yes, I have.
Okay. So, upon meditating, the word pain came to me in a meditation. And I wrote this to you. And pain showed up to me as an acronym. Let me share it with you. Personal.
Please do.
Attachment interpreted neurologically. Now, I know what you're going to ask. What WTF, essentially? Personal, as it relates to you, as in your personal perception, your personal consciousness in relation to your current space-time reality experience.
Could it just be perception then?
Attachment, you're attaching yourself to it, be it identity attachment, or when you're experiencing physical pain, it's very, very common for people to say, I'm in pain, or this part of my body hurts, or whatever the thing is. So there's the attachment. And that is interpreted by the autonomic nervous system, by the central nervous system, and also manifested in the peripheral nervous system neurologically. So where does it all start, Nuala?
In the perception of the human?
So the thought.
Well, we know everything starts with a thought.
So the thought. So if someone's in pain, what thoughts are they thinking? Most people are thinking,
Well, this hurts.
some
What?
people are thinking, oh, this conversation. Most
Keep
people are
going.
thinking,
Most people are thinking what?
this hurts, that hurts, I'm in pain, poor me. Everything's against me, the universe hates me, etc., etc. So that's
Wouldn't take it that far.
the personal or the perception.
Thank you.
Good. Excellent. Then there's the attachment. So remember last time we spoke about the 4 types of clients therapists work with. Client 1, the person who will listen and do everything the therapist says and will heal rather effectively. Client 2 is the polar opposite of client 1. Client 3 is the person who is unconsciously in love with their symptoms and they use it as leverage / power play against others. And then there's client 4, who we need to look at their soul contracts. And there's a lesson in each one. However, if you've been diagnosed with something terminal, there's a deep soul lesson there, which we spoke about before. So there's the attachment to it. Right. It's what you personally identify as / with.
Mm.
Now, how you interpret that, you could say, comes from your belief / beliefs, plural. Your beliefs are set up by the thoughts that you think. The beliefs turn into the behavior, which ultimately direct the outcome. And the outcome, especially from a physiological viewpoint, is neurological pain. So,
Yes, neurological pain. Would you say, from what you asked me just before, that you feel neurological pain when you are in spiritual pain?
you can,
Mm-hmm.
for sure, on any levels, mental, emotional, spiritual, you can.
Physical.
So physical
obviously.
pain, so when I'm talking about physical pain, I'm not necessarily talking about the statistical 15% of all pain that are in accidents and falls and stuff like that. I'm talking about the 85% of pain, which is diagnosed as the disc bulges / spinal this, periphery that, all the other diagnoses you get from your doctor, your physio, your chiro, etc., that you don't really know where it come from. So you wake up one morning, your back hurts, your knee hurts, your head hurts, your neck hurts, your knees, your foot, your big toe, your elbow, whatever it is. Something hurts. Or maybe even you wake up one day and you're just really anxious for some reason. Maybe you wake up feeling really low. Maybe one day you wake up really high and vibrant and then you go to sleep really low, or the opposite. So all these things manifest neurologically. For me, a spiritual pain will be doing something, knowing it's not going to work, that you get instant gratification out of, maybe, but you keep doing it anyway, which you could argue is the definition of
Insanity.
insanity or addiction.
Oh, yeah.
So,
well, it depends if you're wanting a different outcome by doing the same thing.
Yeah.
If you're wanting a different outcome, it's insanity. If you're not expecting anything other than what is, then it's addiction.
So you could argue either way that some sort of spiritual pathology or pain, right? You're going against your belief. You're going against your values. So you're sabotaging your own existence, which for me, I would classify as like a spiritual pain, pathology, problem, whatever word you want to use. So it really is up to the person on what kind of client they want to be as well. Some people are happy playing victim. Some people are happy playing the saboteur. Some people are happy playing the prostitute, which is just really selling themselves for money. Doesn't have to be.
How would you see a prostitute in your clinic?
I would see someone who works a job they hate for the money they get.
How would they be as a client? 1, 2, 3, or 4?
Depends what they're coming in for. Very few people are going to come in saying, I hate my job, but it's for the money. And I feel this way about it. It's going to
I feel I get a lot of people like that.
For me, it would manifest as some kind of joint pain, muscle tension, neurological disorder, maybe anxiety, depression, something like that.
Could you consider that when someone comes in with something muscular, that they are essentially playing a story or belief in their head that they are not worthy, that their self-esteem is low?
So in my experience, maybe 10% of patients have been a muscular issue. Maybe 10%, if I'm being generous.
Would you say they're related to trauma, like physical trauma would be that? Or could it also be not like to those 10% specifically? Would you say that they are, would that be related to like a physical, like they've had like an accident or something?
Some people would present with a delayed onset trauma. I'm not sure if that's how you say it clinically, but like a delayed reaction. So they might have had a trauma as a 10-year-old falling off monkey bars, but it's presented later in life as chronic shoulder issues. Something like that, because the body never forgets. The tissues hold the memory. So in that case, absolutely. I don't see many. I see the odd sort of car accident, more whiplash type patient, but the 85% of the undiagnosed idiopathic pain, it's been happening for years upon years upon decades. And if you think of how this spiritual, mental, emotional, physical body interact with each other, it can't not create a weak link within the system. So I've spoken about archetypes and the core archetypes, the survival archetypes, then the active archetypes. Now, what if someone has something happen to them at a young age and they play victim their whole life to that? That's going to create a weak link in the chain
Pain.
in the chain somewhere in the system. And depending on the psychological theme of the trauma, you're going to hold that in a certain part of your body. And that's where organs come in, because organs are the receptive tissues to that frequency. Now, you have tension in an organ / gland, maybe even a nerve channel. But then this is where also the body has a survival hierarchy of neurological structures that it must protect over others. So I'm interested to ask you, from a TCM perspective, is there a hierarchy of structures that would take precedence over other parts?
There is, but I think because of the way that everything is cyclically connected, it's hard to just pull from one to the other. And it's not energetically, you could see that based upon someone's presentation. So you could see that someone is like, well, they're functioning from fear. Their whole life they've been in fear because of whatever reason. And whether that was like, they're afraid because, when it comes home, they're going to be, smacked. Or when, they're sitting in perpetual fear because they're just not a good person, or whatever they've done is not right, based upon the people that love them and care for them. And yeah. But that person is therefore going to show up some like hyper sensitivities in that like elemental aspect. So it might be that they have lower back pain, they might have sore knees, they might have these things. But I also feel like because of that experience potentially, or if it was a shock, say, coming to that perspective, is like the body will naturally adapt to make sure that whatever they know or whatever is necessary in order for them to survive, they now do a certain thing. And they know now to please mum so much that dad never comes home and hurts them. So then anyone that's kind of seen to be mum in their life, they will then please that person. But then what we see is their kidney jing starts to become deficient and depleted, and therefore they might have fertility issues because they're giving away all their energy. But then that kidney flows into, say, the liver. So we've got the water that flows into the wood. And if the water isn't flourishing and moving, the water is also related to our fertility. And if that is not flowing into the liver or the wood energy, then you're going to get this discrepancy there. So then we've got a deficiency moving in there. So from a physiological perspective, you wouldn't tend to see, from a physiological TCM perspective, it wouldn't be particularly that way, that you would see that certain organs were protected more so. Now, the brain and the marrow is correlated also to the kidney in terms of fluid. So that, from that perspective, the kidney is seen to be quite an important organ, but as is the liver, in terms of making sure the whole system functions, in terms of it being in controlled environment, maintained in that control. And so is the heart, moving into that heart center, the importance that the heart actually, the little Shen that lives inside the heart that ensures that the spirit center is held and contained and maintained, and we're moving along the path that was downloaded through us, through the pregnancy, through that we came here to experience our soul contract. That is kind of the importance of that heart space. We have correlated as Westerners the organs to the organs that were then identified, because it makes us feel good that they're correlative and that it's easeful. But I would say that we we've done that a little bit too far. We're trying to integrate this medicine too much into a Western model, and it's actually taking away from the medicine itself. So I wouldn't say that necessarily the energetics of the organs are so, if that makes sense, that we pull away specifically into any of those, any of the 5 elements are specifically pulled away. However, they will be over time, depending on the adaptation that has been created for the body's survival in a cyclical nature. Because it wants to be, the body wants to survive, life wants to life. And so we will do anything we can to maintain that. Now, I know that from biological standpoint and physiological standpoint of your understanding of the, those mechanics of the body, we know that obviously the heart and the lungs and the brain, without them, we dead.
It's true that we can't survive without some organs. How would you correlate either the chakra system or us holding emotion in the fascia surrounding the organ in that regard?
It wouldn't necessarily be separated. I wouldn't see it as separate.
No, but how would you integrate that?
What do you mean?
So for all the things, the cycles within cycles of the body, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's just take.
So the fascia system itself would be correlated to the liver.
The whole fascia system?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fascia is the sinews, which is sinews and would come under sinews, and that is correlated to the wood. We would correlate to the liver. Once again, like I said, Westerners are trying to integrate Chinese medicine into Western functionality because there are a lot of crossovers, but it's probably to the point where, now it makes it neat and tidy, whereas it's probably a little bit more nuanced than that. But fascia is correlated to wood and sinews. So then anything that would be related to any fascia around any organ, the mesentery, all of that. Oh, well, mesentery is sort of more correlated to the sanjiao to some extent.
Which is what?
The sanjiao is the triple burner. So it's the energetic movement from top to bottom, the 3 layers, the upper, the middle, and the lower.
Would you say that's like the HPA axis, if that was a meridian?
Look at you trying to make a nice, neat box of these things. Possibly, but also not. It's not. It's more the whole. It's the communication system between every organ. And
so
there
like
is
the
a really...
pituitary.
It could be seen as the whole hormonal dance.
Yeah, so that's like the pituitary's job, master hormonal gland, which is included in the HPA.
Yeah, but it's including, it's not just the HPA.
No.
Is what I'm saying. So it's kind
like
of
all inclusive type
hormonal picture in some way.
Yeah.
But it's about the way that, it's the communication within the system. And also the communication, it correlates to the heaven and earth. So it also correlates to the idea of what's been kind of brought in and then is now dancing together within the system itself.
So in other words, it's connected to episode, I want to say 15.
Yeah, it's around that.
Ish.
That heaven, earth, sanjiao.
And is there any correlate to that, to the chakra model?
There is, but it's the same thing as putting things in nice, neat boxes. There's absolutely relationships, but, you have your lower sex organs, which correlate to the kidney, but the way that the lower red, like the red chakra is sort of slightly, yeah, it wouldn't be, it's not quite the kidney water. It's sort of, yeah, it's sort of different in that it's like, it's obviously the base, but it's correlated to the element of earth, which is not obviously not water. And that's more correlated to, your adrenal glands over the kidney itself. But yeah, it's sort of like, it sort of dances together, but not exactly. So as you move up, through the chakras, you can kind of, I feel like it's less in correlation to where the kidneys are and maybe in correlation to where the dance moves. So the I am, is it the I am? No. What's the what's Muladhara? What's the thing of that? The
Muladhara.
It's Muladhara is the name for the root chakra, which is the red color.
I know it
But
is
it
the
has
red
like
light energy. Yeah.
yeah, okay. I can't think of what it is in terms of it's about me, right? Is it the I am? Anyway, I can't.
It's the Safety Security Tribal Association.
Yeah.
It's the who are you in this? It's not who are you in this tribe. It's who is my tribe? Where is my safety?
Yeah, okay. Safety. Okay, yeah. Yeah, belonging and all that. Yeah, so I think if you were to put that into that could probably come, it wouldn't be correlated to the kidney being in that area fully. It would possibly, more belonging in those aspects. Yeah, I guess that comes into a few other aspects.
I think for
More,
me,
more.
it wouldn't correlate, but it would not correlate. Correlate, yeah. Also, it's involved, but it's not directly involved in some people.
Yeah, okay.
Some people
Yeah.
it
So,
is, some people it's not.
yeah. So, what are you saying?
I'm saying people that I see who are experiencing this type of personal attachment interpreting neurologically, the people who perceive that they are not safe or secure in their experience in this life will often present pain, not only in the lower back slash L5 to S5, but they will produce symptoms anywhere along that nerve channel, which goes all the way to the big toe. And it can be
Okay.
some kind of sacroiliac, it can be some kind of sacrococcygeal, it can be knee, foot, ankle, sciatica, any number of symptoms from that. But essentially, when you trace it back far enough, it comes back to them stressing about money, not feeling safe within themselves, within a relationship, all those kinds of themes. It goes on and on. So I'm going to throw something to you.
Mm-hmm.
From the P.A.I.N acronym that we've discussed,
Mm-hmm.
breathing, where does that sit?
Well, breathing is obviously going to sit with metal in the lungs, large intestine, and be correlated emotionally towards like letting go.
Okay. I see that breathing as the diaphragm, which might be, is that too contained for TCM?
You mean that it's specific to the diaphragm?
Well, specific to the diaphragm, but the diaphragm is also innervated by nerves come from C3, 4, and 5 in the neck, which also are highly sensitized to activity from the skull and the brainstem. So I guess I'm coming at it from more of a physiological angle, because oxygen is the most important nutrient we can have.
Mm.
Therefore, any disruption in oxygen, the nervous system will alter any muscle/joint recruitment in order to get more oxygen in, which can further.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. So it would be still correlated to the lungs in Chinese medicine. It would be correlated to the metal, because the metal is the last drop. It's like that. The metal is the letting go before the cycle begins again. So everything must end there. And if we think of that as the last breath that someone will take, is usually the moment that we know they have passed. Everything ends there.
Okay. What about TMJ, or temporomandibular joint, jaw?
So I'm going to give you a few bits as we go through this, because I've had a look at it, but we're going to have some crossovers. It's not just going to be one neat little parcel.
Never
It's
is.
going to be,
Why would it be?
well, when you're talking about a jaw, then, but yeah, well, obviously it's going to be, well, not obviously, but it's going to be correlated to the earth element in terms of digestion. And then there's also going to be a little bit of water in there, because the kidney is correlated to teeth.
Is it correlated to specific teeth or teeth in general?
The kidney correlates to all teeth, all teeth, yeah. Because like the mouth itself is more an earth container, because it's on that digestion. But then the kidney as a whole cover all the teeth. Now that you've got you can then look at it from another map, and that would break down the teeth into different specific bits and pieces. But in terms of the way that the teeth are being used as a whole system, would be connected to the kidney, which is connected to the water element. But then that would be deeply associated with obviously what the earth and water connect to, which is sort of like you're worrying or you're overthinking or that sort of stuff, earth stuff.
Does it correlate to anything in the face or head?
Well, then you've got it just depends how we want to look at it, because then you've got a channel, the stomach channel runs across the jaw. The bladder channel comes down and around. Well, it goes up from here and down the back of the head, but there is an internal channel that doesn't have points on it that comes across the cheek. But it depends how you're going to look at it. Are you going to map it from the meridian perspective? Are you going to map it from the actual functionality perspective?
Do they follow the sutures of the skull at all? The meridians or the channels?
They can do certain, not fully. Oh, nah, not particularly with the sutures of the skull. I think that there probably is a little bit more of a correlation, like the gallbladder channel will run like does like a back and forth before it runs down the body. And so I'm sure that there's something energetic in that, but I think it might be more, we might see a better mapping of that correlating to the brain, but just in the way that it hasn't really been done thus far that I've seen. But yeah.
Yeah, because I know structurally or physiologically the entire musculoskeletal system it'll bend, it'll twist, it'll do whatever it needs to keep the teeth lined up. So the TMJ is one of the most sensitive joints in the human body. What about vision?
Eyes are correlated to wood, which is liver. It's all about vision, but that's the vision aspect. So I'm correlating that because you say it's I've looked at what the totem thing is. It's about visual.
Are you talking about visual as in binocular vision, like physical vision, or vision?
Both.
So all inclusive.
Yeah, it can be all inclusive because it's going to give you your direction.
Yeah.
The hun gives you direction in life, is kind of gives you that kind of directive as this is the way you need to go, which is why when you get angry, when someone crosses that path, can cross that boundary or crosses or pushes you in a way you don't want to be moved. Or also why that can correlate to the gallbladder and be that when someone pushes you, you just go and you bend because you don't have a stern directive, a stern, solid vision of what way you're going.
But from a physical perspective, the eyes actually recruit the muscles. So a lot of people with muscle imbalances, you can test the eyes and see if there's exophoria, which is where you cover the eye and then the eye just drifts out, or exophoria, where the eye drifts in, which can be a cranial nerve thing, or it can be a muscular thing, or it can be a pressure thing within the eye socket, or even the optic nerve or the optic chasm in the visual field, and that go on and on and on.
And as you say those things right now, each of those pieces, do they correlate to different aspects? If you're getting endo or exo, or if you're getting like an eye socket thing or a pull back or a push forward.
They would correlate to people with scoliosis in their spine. It will also correlate to people who have a discrepancy in their peripheral vision.
Can I tell you a fun fact?
Sure.
Women's peripheral vision is much better than men's.
I should hope
Probably based upon what is it that impacts the peripheral vision?
Well, from an anatomical viewpoint, it's the cranial nerve that sets it up. Also the ocular motor nerve and the trochlear nerve.
Yeah, interesting. So they must be better, not better, but they must be better equipped in a female than they are in a male biologically.
Well, how that would work, I'm getting my nerd hat on. How it would work would, from each eye, if you got your right eye, left eye, it would cross into here, which would be the optic chasm. And then it would cross, the right eye is connected to the left brain, left eye to the right brain. And it's that crossover which gives the visual acuity. But it's the ocular motor nerves and the trochlear nerves which control the eye movement left to right, up and down. But it's the cranial nerve which gives the whole kind of picture through here. But it has to go through, where it passes very close by the corpus callosum in the brain, which integrates left and right hemispheres of the brain, which women have 30% more fibers. So based on what you just said, women in theory should have approximately 30% more of that.
Yeah, more peripheral vision than and therefore more ability to hold more things.
More
It's funny
things,
how when
do more things at once, and guys are better at just the laser focus thing.
Absolutely. And it's just pretty powerful to understand that from a biological standpoint and an anatomical standpoint, that this is actually starting from 6 weeks gestation, right? It's starting from the moment this first insurge of testosterone hits the baby zygote.
Upper neck.
Yeah. So.
Oh no, I didn't get the vestibular. Sorry.
Well, vestibular is going to be about balance, right? So balance, you could correlate to both, well, the water system, which is going to be your ears directly, and then your movement is going to come from, well, yeah, you could say that it's coming from wood, which is that direction again, which is the liver, which is going to guide and move direction. Doesn't feel super smooth there though. Anyway.
So the vestibular system being like the spirit level of the brain, telling the rest of the body where it's at in space and time.
Mm.
And similar to the eyes, if you've got a dominant eye, you'll always lead with that eye. But if you've got a dominant ear, you'll always lead with that ear. So it's like a holding hands type thing. But also the eighth cranial nerve, the vestibulocochlear nerve, which innervates the inner ear, also has innervations into what's called the tentorium cerebelli, which is a horizontal membrane in the brain which separates upper and lower hemispheres or parts of the brain. So a lot of people with digestive stuff, we'll call it, have let's say a Chinese burn effect in that cranial membrane. And is there something that you do as an acupuncturist for that?
Say what it was. I understand the Chinese burn part, but what was the thing that you said that they had?
The membrane is called tentorium cerebelli, which is a horizontal membrane going from it's like a fan shape, but it attaches from the back of the sphenoid, it goes into the merges into the posterior fascia of the skull.
Well, I wouldn't specifically be working on the Chinese burn impact. So I guess this is where we start to see the real, we see the elements of the 5 elements kind of really crossing over. So you have to kind of incorporate both the water and the wood. So you have to, in order to kind of encapsulate how the vestibular functions from that check perspective, it encapsulates both, say, the emotion would be like, I don't know whether it's fear as such, like in terms of how the, what are those things in the air that
The crystals?
the bones, the crystals, yeah.
Yeah.
They would be correlated more likely to, I would correlate them to the water being crystal form of, and the ear itself is correlated to the water.
Right. Does the elements correlate to specific anatomy, or is it more that system?
They have specific anatomy in terms of organs, which we've spoken about a lot, like big main organs. But then the Chinese never cut things open and looked at them. There was always placed a map created based upon what the season was doing, based upon how the body and the human responded to their environment. So that's like the massive difference between Western medicine and like Eastern medicine or Eastern philosophy that became medicine, was that there's never they never actually looked inside the body to understand it. They always looked at it in relationship to the environment with which it was.
So it'd be like if a Western scientist was to study a frog, the scientist would cut it open and see the anatomy and all that kind of stuff. But the Western scientist wouldn't see how the frog interacts with its environment.
Yes. And how the different seasons adjust the different way the frog moves its body, and the way that certain things impact it more intensely. How it's like, obviously looking to mate in the springtime, you're going to see the frogs act differently to what you would see, the energy shifts and changes. Whereas they would just be like, oh, okay, let's see, oh, it seems to have this thing where it jumps really high. Let's cut off its legs and see how the tendons and muscles attach and how the short muscle fibers and this thing. But I guess this is where, anyway, it's sort of like the anatomy meeting the spirit in the
Yeah,
way
it's
that
the spirit and
the
science
totem.
merging
But
together.
I'd say that I think from what I understand, maybe you need to explain a little bit more deeply to people that aren't aware of what we're going through right now, the Czech totem pole system. Like, what does that even mean?
So back
I
in
guess
the
I understand it. Let me say, and then you correct me because I'm simple on this, that it is the most important things, maintaining a human body functioning. And so therefore, like we're starting at the very most important thing is the breath, which then goes into the digestion or the mastication, the functionality of the mouth to ensure that we can eat. Then we need, the function of the eyes and the ears. I guess you've got all the things. But anyway, it's like those things at the very top are the most important things. So then we will let go of the things that are at the bottom.
Yeah, so it's essentially comes back to the Paul Chek when he did his research clinically. Humans are wired to survive, and the human body is really master compensator. When we are in a survival mode, which can be anything from a relationship breakup to eating poor quality food to spraining a joint and everything around that and in between, you go into survival mode. So when we go into survival mode, we have higher order systems that take precedence over lower order systems. So what we've been going through is the top part of the totem pole. So the very top of the totem pole is actually the psyche, which we've kind of indirectly covered probably most episodes, and how all the yin and the yang is contained within that, and recognizing that as the whole and how the whole's in you. But that's a whole other thing. But purely from a physiological viewpoint, breathing would be up the top, because breathing is the most important nutrient that we can get. Then we go into the jaw mechanics, because the entire body is a slave to the jaw. Then we go to the eyes and the ears. They could be kind of swapped around, but generally speaking, well, it's a would you rather, eyes or ears? If you were to survive in the wild type thing, I'd choose
Eyes.
for sure. So they're on top. Then we go to the vestibular system, which is all about kind of our inner equilibrium. And so people with vertigo, for example, their equilibrium is out. Their brain thinks they're on a rocking boat. So their whole world moves around them. They don't move around the whole world. So it sends a mixed signal to the brain. That's why they get kind of stuck in that. The next one down, the upper neck. So the occiput, C1, C2, C3. Is there
And why is that really important?
Well, there's several reasons. One, it's the goalkeeper to the brain. You can look at the anatomy of the muscles of the spine. It goes up and they attach to C2. From C2, the anatomy changes, and the anatomy isn't necessarily more vertical. It becomes more oblique and horizontal. So that's why in craniosacral therapy, they call it another diaphragm up around the hyoid and C1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's the goalkeeper to the brain, but it's also C2's attachment to the dura mater, which is the outer layer of the spinal cord. The dura mater is where the nerve roots exit the spinal cord and become peripheral nerves. So that dura mater is essentially formed from the cranial dura that wraps around the brain through the brainstem. It forms the dura mater right at the sphenobasilar junction, right at the brainstem. And it turns into what we call dura. There are dural mechanisms in the brain, but it's essentially the shortest kind of message from body to brain. And so the upper neck, you have the foramen magnum, which is about 12 mil. That's the hole where the brain and the spine goes through there, and the spinal cord itself takes up about 8 mil. So if that atlas or the axis or C3 are rotated more than 4 degrees, it can put a torque through that dura and your entire skeleton will shift in an attempt to minimize compression of the spinal cord. So it's really, 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 really sensitive part, but you won't know it consciously. Symptoms of like an atlas subluxation can be feeling really uncoordinated, dropping things, walking into walls and doors and chairs and all that kind of stuff, but you won't kind of feel it in the neck. It'll be more of a coordination thing. Is there a
I mean,
element?
it feels the element would be like if we're kind of, I mean, my idea of those cranial nerves in that sense is kind of this idea of, the survival ancestral knowledge. And that's going to go back to kidneys and bladder. That's what the kind of the ancestral knowledge is living within that. So, you're at water again. But yeah, I don't really truly think that this overlaying idea is really maybe giving too much depth in a way to the totem pole itself. It feels like the totem pole itself is quite potent in the way it is focused on the physiology of the human body. Whereas I think that I could look at this in a few different ways. It just feels a little bit stretched, if that makes sense. It sort of doesn't sit in a really, I feel like we kind of, anyway, I digress. Let's go on. So we've got those, what happens next? So I just want to like affirm for people listening that we are essentially going to the lesser and lesser important aspects for survival. So now this kind of the cranial nerves, whilst you've just shared that it's super sensitive and that when that can completely essentially create adaptations throughout the entire body, it's like, the fifth on the rung. So it's like quite a depth down before
Relatively low.
but that's okay. So then going on. So what's the next one?
Well, there's 3. There's the viscera, emotions, and then the intestinal tract. We've spoken about each one. For me, those 3 symbols, I think from what I've experienced clinically, they're the same symbol. And Paul talks about the emotions being a floating symbol because your emotions can overrun your psyche. Emotions can dictate your mood. So emotion can, it's like kind of like what's the card in the deck that sort of trumps everything? I'm not great at cards.
Ace.
Ace, is it? Yeah. So it can be the ace card of that from a pathology point of view, because your emotions are essentially your inner GPS system, so they can essentially run the body. But then we go from there down into the pelvis, which we've spoken about briefly, but then into the slave joint. So the slave joint is anything from C4 down. And that's where most symptoms occur. Symptoms occur in the shoulder, the elbow, the hands, the knees, the lower back, the feet, etc.
Hang on. So just to get this right, this is like the rung number 6. Is that what we're at? All of those pieces are in like the structure. Is that, or have we moved down into number 8, which is the extremities? Bypass the organs.
Well, we've spoken about the organs a lot. I'm happy to go into it.
Oh yeah, no. I'm just no. You don't need to go into it necessarily, but I'm just trying to get this totem pole understanding of like where everything gets let go. So you moved from the spine, and then we moved past the organs.
Okay, so have you got a picture of it in front of you?
I'm working on like an 8-rung kind of totem pole. That's my understanding of like you've got your first
right
breathing, you got your second, your mouth, your jaw, you You got the third, which is your vision or ears. You said ears and vision, third and fourth are there, like vestibular system or vision.
So the eighth
Then
would be
that's
the
3 and
intestinal
4.
tract. Is that right?
No, 5 is like your cranial nerves. And then the 6 is like your spine, or central nervous system. And then your 7 is your organs. And then your 8 is your limbs and muscles and extremities.
Well, yeah. It goes the
Is
further
that
down.
sort of,
Yeah. The further down, essentially the further away from your head that you get, the more likely symptomatic symptoms are going to show up.
yeah, but that's because, right, like if you have a problem with breathing or eating, you're going to be responding to that pretty quickly.
Yep.
Right. Like it's not a life or death situation. When you start to move, like think about, for example, Hampus. He literally had double vision here and there for 5 months before he did anything about it.
Mm.
You know, like that was vision. And vision is like right up the top of the totem pole in terms of the importance of it. So like anything past that is sort of like
But
going to
also,
have a bit of an
it's
impact.
kind of interesting that working with the jaw relieved the pressure.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's interesting at all. I think that makes perfect sense that I mean, it's not interesting, but I think it's just a matter of like, sorry, it's not that it's not interesting. It's just that it's really affirming
Yeah.
in many ways of the way that things function. And like what you were talking about earlier about how the eyes and the optic, well, you didn't say the optic nerve, but you were talking about all the chasms and how they move from left to right and they interlock each other and like wrap around. And it's like that moves then down the back of the head and then down the spine. And if you go into the way that, the way that we sort of have been looking after Hampus and treating him is this idea of how you have these sort of certain conflicts that have impacted him. And the conflict that was essentially active was that he had a neck situation, that his neck was out of balance. And whilst like we know this, I'm sure Hampus will be okay with me sharing, but when he was having treatment with you, like prior to even knowing anything, you had shared that his neck was out like by like, a lot, and his whole body was responding to that. So there was like, it was quite you kind of pulled up the neck before Hampus had any pain or discomfort there. He didn't actually have any discomfort there. But yeah, it wasn't until it got to that top talk at the top. But yeah, I think that's the point of talking about this, right? Is to understand how our body functions in when we are adapting, when we're trying to adapt, we let go of what is at the bottom and make sure that the needs are met at the top.
Yeah, because those lower systems are slaves to the higher systems, basically, as you just said. And then the thing that starts the whole thing is essentially the thought. Because if that thought you keep thinking goes against your inner voice, your inner belief system, then it creates that friction. And that friction creates tension. That tension then turns into some kind of dysfunction, be it structural or metabolic or postural. Everyone's got their own strategy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is quite a coming back to your acronym that you shared earlier, the perception or personal.
Attachment.
Do you want to?
Personal, we could call it PP. Personal attachment interpreted neurologically. So it's just another way how our thoughts, we wear our thoughts, we wear our choices. That's where I'm kind of driving at here.
Okay, so we just spoke for an hour and a half for you to say that, or
Yep.
what?
I had a
It
lot
is
to
pretty
share.
powerful to be. Fuck, here's your TED talk for today. I think it's really important. Like what you're sharing is so powerful and really like it kind of brings us back to this talk that we've had a few we've been talking about the wounding and the alchemy and alchemizing our thoughts and our wounds and our experiences. And I'm excited to talk to you about something I've recently listened to. And it feels a bit wild, but it kind of comes back to this idea that we wear our thoughts and we wear our beliefs, and whatever experiences we've had are just what they are, and they are perfectly imperfect. We are here with a soul contract journey, and physiologically our body is going to adapt and is going to do its very best to maintain what we have and what we need to do to like experience life in the best possible way.
But also on the flip side of that, it can only take so much at a given time. So that's where we need a bit of self-TLC.
Yeah, and that's the thing with TLC. It's like we have this idea of, what is TLC and what does that look like? And how does that feel? And I think obviously, I am all for getting support from clinicians just like ourselves, or being guided back to our bodies and being guided back in a way that actually looks at us from a holistic channel. But I think it's really interesting now that I have been thrust into this whole new dimension where a lot of the things that I was concerned about feel a lot less important, and a lot of the things that I haven't been feel much more potently important. So for me now, things that used to be important was to ensure that I was, energetically in alignment, making sure that I was getting like treatments or whatever, or making sure I was taking my herbs or eating the right foods. And I'm not saying not to do those things, but I'm realizing that what feels mostly like having the biggest impact on me is the energy I put towards it. So when I'm feeling frustrated or irritated, it has a much bigger impact on the whole than I have liked to let on. So that's been quite an interesting, it's just been an interesting mind-opening experience when you are actually faced, or someone you really love and care for and is the father of your 3 small children has like this life, life or death. Here's life, here's death. You choose what way you want to go. And it's sort of a bit like, oh shit, like, we knew, or we had a knowing that we were doing all the right things. We've been eating organic food. We've been trudging down the path of holistic care. We've been trudging down the path of like understanding why we do the things we do. But what I want to like really hone in on is the thinking that is being worn on the outside of the body, that you sense when you meet someone, that you feel when you're in company with others, that you can like dance with. And personally, like, I have seen such like radical experience, radical change from my partner, but also in myself and how I would normally respond to certain things and how I would normally be in certain situations. Like if he forgot something that I wanted, and there'd be no real particular reason why I really, really wanted it. It's just that I wanted it and it wasn't available because he forgot it. And I would make a big deal of it. Now that energy's gone. The charge has been released and relinquished because there's no need for it, because life will life. Or I can mull over it, or I can just let it go in that moment. And it's funny how it's even for me, like I haven't had the life or death experience, but I've definitely had the what it'll be like if I don't have a partner. And it highlights so much of the wasted space and the wasted thinking that is actually being felt on the outside, as much as we want to believe it's not, in a sense. I'm just, we're like pushing that stuff down, this pain that we're pushing down into the body that we're experiencing on some level, this disharmony that we're experiencing on some level. And I don't know, here's a question to you, Matt. Do you believe then that we should so if it's all about the thought, should we really, like, should we be doing more of something in particular, more of a particular TLC practice? Like, should we be doing more, say, meditation, or should we be doing more alchemy work where we're diving deep into our wounds, or should we be doing more? What do you think?
The two things that need to happen, regardless of how you do it. First thing, you need to let yourself off the hook, which is probably the most irrational thing you could do. Let yourself and everyone else off the hook. And then find something that you love and do that, study that, be that. And the more you do that, the more you just become that love. You give yourself permission to live. And as I've said, I don't think, the old question, what's the purpose of life? I don't think life has a purpose. We give it purpose. So we've got to find what we love, give ourselves permission to do it. And any belief systems that arise in people that make you question, should I be doing this? Well, really question the should and ask where that came from, because it's not yours. But if we can firstly just get still enough within ourselves to find what it is that we love. It can be a hobby, it can be study, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter what it is, as long as it means something to you. And it might be going against society. It might be doing something really unorthodox. Who cares? It's your life. So you do it kind of your way. And yes, there's 1,000 different techniques on shadow work and working with the inner child and sitting with the wounds and all that kind of stuff. I think that's really individual. But I think it comes back to, that friction of a thought comes back to us doing something that we're not loving, job, relationship, whatever it is. So if we can find that love and that connection, then we become connected to ourselves. It becomes more like a magnet to be connected to others on that wavelength. And then you're just sharing that love with the world. So that's how you do that.
Yeah, magic. Well, it's sort of like looking at the P.A.I.N.
Boom.
P.A.I.N.
That's how it's interpreted.
Ted, who's Ted?
Said Ted.
In the head?
Sure.
Ted in the head? Oh,
Yeah.
Ted talk. Oh, I get it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. We've got fun stuff on the horizon. Leave us a voice note. Catch up with us in clinic or Matt in clinic. And
feel
see
free
you
to leave
soon.
us a 5-star review and a rating.
Oh, yeah.
Let us
Appreciate
help us
that
grow,
too.
just so we can help more people. And I got more jokes lining up.
Whoa. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
You've been listening to The Wizard and the Priestess. Thanks for stopping by. Stay connected and be open.